Science, at its heart, is not a sprint toward answers, but a lingering gaze at questions. People imagine equations and lab coats, and yes, those have their place. But beneath them, there is a gentler craft, almost a lullaby. Attention, patience, wonder. Tonight, let's take a slow wander through that softer side. No rushing. We'll let scenes unfold, the way a cup of tea releases its warmth, gradually, steadily. And we'll follow one quiet marvel to the next, as if we're strolling through a museum after closing time. Voices low, footsteps soft, every exhibit given the courtesy of time. We begin where the air is warm enough to feel like a hand on your shoulder, and everything is washed in green. Think of it as a midnight tour, with the lights turned low, the labels set aside, and a kind guide who is in no hurry at all. We won't be dazzled so much as gently surprised. We'll touch the glass with our fingertips and then put our hands back in our pockets. We'll listen for the small sounds, not the thunder of rockets, but the hush of leaves, the click of an instrument waking, the soft scrape of a pencil beginning to draw. And between each place we visit, we'll pause the way you do on a quiet walk with someone you like. We won't feel the need to fill the silence. We'll let the last thought finish echoing before we pick up the next. That too is part of science's kindness. It leaves room for wonder to arrive on its own feet. Imagine kneeling on a rainforest floor as the day exhales after rain. Leaves are beaded with water. A bird calls somewhere out of sight, a soft two-note whistle, and you can smell soil the way you can smell fresh bread, alive. On a broad leaf above your eyeline, a pale green frog has tucked itself to sleep. Under the broken light, it looks ordinary, almost toy-like. Then, very slowly, it begins to fade. Color drains, as if someone has gently lowered the saturation dial on the forest. The frog's veins blur, the skin turns glassy, and the body takes on the softness of river water. If you lean closer, you can see, suspended like a ruby, a tiny heart keeping time. The frog is not hiding behind bark or under moss. It is hiding by becoming almost not there. This is the glass frog's particular magic. During the day, it withdraws most of its red blood cells into a reflective little vault inside its liver. With the redness hidden, light slips through instead of bouncing back, and the animal quietens into translucence. The trick is delicate. Life doesn't care for long pauses in circulation, and yet the frog does it without fuss, as routine as folding a blanket before a nap. Predators sweep the leaves with their eyes and find only leaf green and shadow. The frog is there, and also somehow not there at all. At dusk, the spell unwinds. Blood returns to its rounds. Color blooms back. The ghost becomes a frog again, and it moves with the humility of a small thing that has outwitted a large world. It does not brag. It simply rejoins the night chorus. Watching it, a person might feel a tug of recognition, the relief of being able to step back from brightness, to make yourself quiet when the day asks too much. I like the gentleness of that idea. You can sometimes avoid danger, not by running from the world, but by letting the world pass through you. And tucked in that thought is another, that what is hidden is not lost. Potential can go quiet without going away. Which brings us, as the forest darkens and the little heart keeps beating, to a boy in a very different landscape, with a talent that nearly stayed invisible. Picture a morning in 17th century Lincolnshire. The wind is a practical thing there, not poetry, and it moves across open fields like a hand smoothing cloth. A thin young man in a rough coat walks a boundary, lists of chores lining up in his head. Count the sheep, mend the fence, mind the orchard. The farm expects his attention, but his gaze drifts. He notes how the wind pushes the mill sails, how the shadow of a cloud changes the color of a hedgerow. He sketches little devices when he should be checking the ewes. He rigs a water wheel in the stream, not because the farm needs it, but because his mind does. This is Isaac, expected to be a farmer because that is what the place and the time require. He tries. He really does. But the fields do not hold his whole mind. The neighbor's boy is content to swing a scythe. Isaac wants to measure the breeze. Somewhere inside him, a restlessness keeps tapping, as if a question is trying to be born. He is not yet the Isaac Newton who writes in tight, perfect lines. He is a young man whose attention keeps slipping the leash. An uncle notices. School, he thinks. Let the boy try books again. And so, the path kinks. Years later, back at the farm during an outbreak of plague, Isaac spends long hours under an apple tree. Whether or not an apple truly fell in the storybook way, something fell into place. Why always down? Why not sideways? What if the pull between things, the apple and the earth, the moon and the sea, is a single, simple law you can write and carry in your pocket? He begins to build a world from questions that sound like children's, and he answers them with mathematics that hums with adult certainty. I like to imagine that orchard afternoon with humble weather, no lightning bolts, just a young man listening hard to how the universe prefers to behave. A small, solid thought clicks into another, and the rest of us, centuries later, recognize the shape they make when they lock. From a field where wind is work to a thought that reaches planets, the line is surprisingly short. And because we are thinking of trees, one familiar orchard in England, let's walk now to another tree, unimaginably far, where the wind is not a metaphor either, but a force that scours. Down in the Southern Ocean, where maps forget to be tidy and weather has teeth, sits Campbell Island, cliffs, tussock, sea spray, and the sound of birds that have never learned to fear people. There are no native trees, nothing tall to interrupt the sky, except, improbably, a single Sitka spruce planted by human hands more than a century ago. It stands alone on a slope like a misplaced punctuation mark, the only tree for hundreds of miles. Storm after storm has worried it, but there it is, persistent, holding out green regardless. The trunk is a journal of injuries and repairs. The bark wears the years, the way sailors wear weather in their faces. When scientists gored the wood and sifted the soil at its feet, they found something unsettling and oddly beautiful, a timestamp of us. Traces of radioactive carbon from mid-20th century nuclear tests had drifted on winds and currents and settled here, at the edge of everything, written into rings as neat as ledger lines. People sometimes call it the loneliest tree on earth. I think of it as the most attentive. It has kept a diary no one asked it to keep. Storms, salt, the occasional albatross resting in its leeward hush, and the invisible arrival of our species' bigger story. A tree as witness, a tree as memory, a quiet archivist filing away the evidence of a century when human hands could change the chemistry of the sky. When wind pushes a tree, it learns to bend without breaking. Flexibility is survival, and survival, as any city dweller with a cat will tell you, can sometimes look like choreography, which, with a small smile, brings to mind a different kind of mid-air wisdom, something domestic, mischievous, and supremely sure of itself. Imagine a cat missing its step. A paw misjudges a sill. The body slips. Space opens beneath like a pulled rug. Time becomes syrup. The cat's eyes go wide for a heartbeat. Then everything seems choreographed. The front half twists one way, the back half the other. The spine flows, legs tuck and splay in a rhythm dancers train years to earn. Tail becomes rudder, and by the time floor meets fur, the cat is ready. Feet first, knees soft. A thump you feel more than hear. A shake, and that particular feline look that says, quite clearly, I meant to do that. This is the writing reflex, rehearsed not in studios, but written into bones. Kittens begin to master it weeks after birth, without a rigid collarbone and with a wonderfully flexible spine. A cat can rotate its front and rear halves in opposite directions, conserving overall momentum while changing orientation. A physics lesson in pajamas. Veterinarians in high-rise cities noticed a counterintuitive pattern. Falls from greater heights sometimes led to better outcomes than short drops, because the extra time let a cat spread its body, increase drag, and distribute the coming shock. There is elegance here, but not arrogance. Watching it, you learn that survival can be a conversation with gravity rather than a fistfight. You yield here, you redirect there, and you meet the ground on terms you have negotiated on the way down. Humans survive in other ways. Less acrobatic, perhaps, but just as inventive. Sometimes we are saved by the unglamorous habit of looking closely at what most would call a mistake. And that brings us to a room where glass plates smell faintly of disinfectant, where a window sticks when it rains, and where an untidy stack of dishes is about to change the world. London, 1928. A window that sticks when it rains. Dust motes idle in a slant of sunlight, like tiny swimmers. On a cluttered bench, petri dishes look like a stack of moonlight. Alexander Fleming, back from a break, leans in to sort the useful from the ruined. On one dish, a pale green bloom of mold has wandered in uninvited. Around the colony is a ring where the usual grey fog of bacteria refuses to grow. A neat little halo of nothing. Curiosity pauses his hand. Why the ring? Why so crisp? He lifts it, he peers. He decides not to bin it. The mold is penicillium. The absence is a clue. The story then goes quiet for a while, as stories sometimes do. It will take other hands and other years to purify the active substance, to test it, to scale it, to make a medicine that soldiers can carry into mud and surgeons can rely on in clean rooms. But the hinge has turned. In a time not far away, wounds will not be a sentence, and fevers will not be an ending as often as they used to be. I like to picture that first moment as almost domestic. No trumpets, no lightning. Just a person paying attention in a room untidier than he meant to leave it. The world is saved, now and then, by people who stop to look twice. And there is a kinship between noticing and listening. If you listen closely enough, even rocks have something to say. Some of them, touched the right way, sing. Pick up a small crystal of quartz in your imagination. It is cool the way morning shade is cool. Hold it between finger and thumb and press, very slightly. Nothing happens that your senses can register. And yet inside the lattice, charges shift. A whisper of electricity appears. This is piezoelectricity. Pressure becoming charge, charge becoming motion. A translation service between touch and current. Engineers learned to coax that whisper into clocks that keep stubborn time, into radio circuits that choose one frequency and ignore the rest, into ultrasound probes that send pulses into a hidden world and listen for the echo on the way back. A sliver of quartz hums at a frequency so steady you can build your minutes on it. Ceramics flex and answer with sound you cannot hear but can use. A wafer's tidy vibration becomes the metronome for devices that pretend to be effortless. Some crystals, struck just so, spill sound so pure it seems like geometry made audible. A tone that hangs in the air like a line drawn with a steady hand. There's something childlike and serious about it at once. You tap a stone and it answers. You feed a crystal a voltage and it moves with a discipline that would make a marching band jealous. It's the universe saying, I have rhythms. If you learn them, you can keep me company. From tones you can hear to those you can only imagine, music carries us outward. If stones can hum, what might we send into the great quiet beyond the sky, just in case someone is listening? Picture a launch pad in 1977, before dawn has decided what color to be. Voyager waits, two of them, actually, all plumbing and panels and hope. The air is that special kind of Florida thick, and somewhere a coffee goes cold because someone forgot to drink it. Engines start. The ground becomes loud enough to shake your ribs, and a metal idea leaves Earth. Tucked aboard is a golden record that is both modest and audacious. Hello, it says, in many languages. It carries waves and wind and birds, a baby's cry, a map of where we live, and songs, Bach and Beethoven, and a little rock and roll, and music from places the West too often forgets to name. Etched on the outside are instructions for a stranger who does not share our senses to work out how to make it sing. Decades later, the spacecraft is past the sun's guarded boundary, in the part of space where our star is a habit rather than a rule. The record still spins silently, unneeded by its host, necessary to us anyway. Maybe no one will ever find it. Maybe that is not the point. There is dignity in leaving a note that says, we were here, and we listened, and this is what we sounded like when we were kind. From stars, we mailed away to an ocean that sometimes pretends to be a sky. Let's walk down to a beach at night and watch the water copy the cosmos. The first wave is a suggestion. It rolls up, sighs, and slides back, and you might miss it. Then another, and you notice a blue that is not moonlight. The sea has stolen a handful of stars and hidden them in its pocket. When the water breaks, the pocket spills. Footsteps with bright edges. Foam that glows where the air and the sea argue. If you run your hand through the shallows, you leave a comet trail of light that fades as quickly as breath on a window. Bioluminescent plankton are small, but their light is spectacular. A chemistry lesson performed with theater's timing. Disturb them, and an enzyme meets a molecule of luciferin. Oxygen joins the dance, and a photon is released. A pin of blue stitched briefly into the dark. For the plankton, it's a language. I'm here. Don't eat me. For us, it feels like being let in on a secret that the world didn't mean to keep. Stand quietly long enough, and you begin to match the tide's slow logic. The ocean breathes out light and inhales it again. Above you, stars do their old work. Below you, a million tiny lanterns answer back. Science can name the chemistry and measure the wavelengths, but it cannot and should not tidy away the wonder of seeing the sea write constellations at your feet. It is the perfect place to pause, to let the night finish its sentence, to turn for home with sand cold under your heels and your pockets full of quiet marvels. Before we leave the shoreline, let's go smaller, much smaller. Kneel down where moss cups a bead of water and imagine the world inside that droplet. If you could shrink yourself and step in, you would find a forest made of filaments, canyons between grains of sand, and creatures that look like toys a child might invent. 8 stubby legs, a contented, purposeful gait. These are tardigrades, sometimes called water bears, and they move with the gravity of tiny explorers crossing a living map. A tardigrade does not look like it should be remarkable, and yet it is one of the hardiest animals we know. When water is plentiful, it feeds and trundles and behaves, frankly, like a creature with places to be. When water vanishes, or the cold bites, or radiation sparkles in a place nothing delicate should endure, the tardigrade performs a modest miracle. It curls into itself, tucking in legs and head, and enters a state called cryptobiosis, a pause so deep that chemistry slows to a near standstill. In that elegant comma of a posture, it can wait, through droughts, through freezes, through the kind of insult that would turn most living things into memory. Scientists have dried them out and later offered them a drink. The tardigrades unpunctuate themselves and amble on as if they had simply had a nap of heroic length. They have survived pressures that would crush submarines and temperatures that rebuke common sense. A few even weathered a brief adventure in the vacuum of space. Not all made it, but some did. Which feels like a fable the universe wrote for us. Stay small, stay stubborn, and carry your pause button. I love that resilience can be quiet. No thunder, no speeches, just an ability to wait beautifully until better weather returns. And speaking of ancient patience, stand back up and look along the tide line for tracks that look almost like someone rolled a coin edge through the sand. Follow them far enough in time, and you find a creature that predates dinosaurs and still patrols modern beaches in polished armor. Horseshoe crabs look like helmets that grew legs and decided to explore. They have lived their plan for more than 400 million years. Their bodies a compromise that time seems reluctant to improve. In the shallows of spring nights, they gather by the thousand, females ploughing small trenches with deliberate care, while males hold on like earrings, the moon silvering the plates of their backs. If you lift one, gently, always gently, you see the underside is an articulate puzzle. 10 eyes in total, spines, book gills that open and close like pages being fanned. But the most famous thing about them is hidden and blue. Their blood is copper-based rather than iron, and when certain bacterial toxins are present, it clots in a way that is unhelpful for the crab, but profoundly helpful for us. From that property, humans developed a test, a gentle, pale blue sentinel, that lets us check whether the fluids and tools we use in medicine carry dangerous bacterial whispers. In labs, horseshoe crabs are bled and returned to the sea, a practice now more carefully watched and in some places, supplemented by synthetic substitutes so the animals can continue their long patrol untroubled. I think about those moonlit gatherings when I wash my hands in a hospital or see a nurse snap a syringe from a sterile packet. An ancient creature, unknowingly, has helped us keep the modern world clean enough for healing, from blue blood to blue plankton, from pause buttons to golden records. The theme keeps winding back to the same refrain. Life is inventive, and science is how we learn to notice it properly. With that in mind, let's turn for home and gather the threads we've laid down tonight. What have we gathered? A frog that chooses transparency over flight. A farm boy who learned to ask questions that apples and planets both obey. A solitary tree keeping the world's diary in rings. A cat negotiating with gravity and often winning. A dish of mold that opened an era of healing. Stones that hum precisely enough to teach us time. A record, golden and patient, sailing through a dark that is not empty but simply vast. And an ocean that on certain nights borrows the stars. If there is a thread between them, it is not spectacle but attention. The world is articulate. It speaks in pulses and shadows, in rings and halos, in the angle of a cat's paw as it spins, in the hum of quartz, in a line of light along a wave. Science, at its most human, is the art of listening well and answering softly. So as you drift towards sleep, let the scene slow even further. The rainforest hushes itself. The apple tree leans a little toward evening. Wind moves across an empty island, and a single spruce makes the sound that all trees make when they survive. A shiver, then stillness. Somewhere, a cat rearranges itself on a windowsill and pretends nothing dramatic has ever happened. A lab light clicks off. A crystal ticks. Far beyond, a tiny craft with our songs on board keeps going because that is what it was made to do. And the sea, if you could see it now, would draw a blue line around your ankle and erase it again, like a kind teacher proving you still belong on this beach, on this earth, in this story. There is room in this world for facts that comfort and for mysteries that ask nothing of us but our attention. You do not have to solve them tonight. It is enough to have walked among them unhurried and to carry one or two into your dreaming. Good night.